Every year around Halloween, we are treated to an outpouring of what could only be described as scare literature, telling us about how the holiday is satanic and evil and should not be celebrated by Christians. These opinions are backed up by some rather unusual and very frightening fantasies masquerading as historical facts. The following videos are not intended to address whether or not Satan exists, nor to show that witches are nice granola-eating vegetarians and tree huggers who wouldn't harm a fly. Nor is it an attack on fundamentalist Christians, but rather a discussion concerning some of the so-called facts offered in some anti-Halloween publications.
Michele Blake wrote a very popular article entitled 10 Reasons I Kissed Halloween Goodbye. It was responded to by Yuri Stasiak and Derek Owlett. In this series we will go over each reason Blake gave.
Halloween is an excuse to flaunt sexuality. It's true. Halloween is becoming more risque every year. In fact, sometimes I think its real name is Dress Like a Porn Star Day.
This is tragic, and I would argue this gives Christians even more reason to be a positive influential force in Halloween. If there is filth on the internet, should Christians pull the plug, or put positive content out there?
Girls dress more provocatively, and at much younger ages, on this day than any other. There seems to be an unwritten competition to have the racist costume.
Again, in some spectrums of society, though by far not all, this does occur, and it is a tragic example of our sexist society. Yet, this is seen in every aspect of culture, not just Halloween. And again, this gives Christians even more reason to be a positive influential force in Halloween.
For those passing on ghoul or gore, the only other worthy goals seem to be shock and immodesty. But fornication and all uncleanness or covetousness, let it not even be named among you, as is fitting for saints, neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor coarse jesting, which are not fitting, but rather giving of thanks. For this you know, that no fornicator, unclean person, nor covetous man, who is an idolater, has any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness, righteousness, and truth, finding out what is acceptable to the Lord.
Ephesians 5 verses 3 to 8 is included in this point. And all of it is true. And all of it applies to hundreds of other things besides Halloween. If we follow Blake's logic, we can outlaw literally everything. Television helps sexual immorality. Boom, outlaw the telly. High school social interactions inflame sexual immorality. Boom, no more high school. And on and on.
I can vouch from personal experience that when we put on a costume, we often detach ourselves, sometimes ever so slightly, from our inhibitions.
One person's personal experience does not prove anything.
After all, it is much easier to act a tad bit naughty when our real identity is hidden.
Perhaps. Then again, perhaps that only exposes a much deeper problem on the inside. Perhaps we ought to work on the deeper problem than a silly manifestation.
It's almost as if bad behavior is somehow excused when we are in costume.
Again, if someone is doing something bad, and finds his or her costume as an excuse, we ought not blame the costume, but deal with the person and their motivations. This is like blaming a fist for punching another person, and trying to outlaw fists, rather than dealing with the motives of the person who used the fist.
And it's much easier to explain in the morning, I wasn't actually sinning, I was just staying in character.
This is a non-realistic rhetorical argument, and adds nothing to the real world. It is so illogical, that I will say any Christian who sins, and uses that as an excuse has far greater problems than Halloween costumes. This is like someone saying the devil made me do it, and Christians writing a new rule to outlaw the devil in response, instead of dealing with the person holistically.
Even though we are not to have fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, we prefer to emulate them.
We prefer to emulate unfruitful works of darkness again. It is tragic that some people do things like this. It grieves me to see the over-sexualization of girls and women in our society. Yet, this is not a Halloween thing, for this was never a historic part of Halloween, but it is a historic part of Western culture. Let's deal with the real culprit, the rich white men who own the media.
And parade them on our Facebook pages, as if they are somehow deserving of honor.
This is another contemporary culture issue, not a Halloween issue. Yes, many women post provocative photos of themselves on Facebook. Yes, it's terrible. But is Blake really trying to argue that the ancient Christians, who participated in Halloween in 1245 AD, posted dirty pictures on Facebook? No, this is a modern culture thing. Young women do it with bikinis during summer. Should we outlaw summer? Or should we work hard to change the culture?
And have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of those things, which are done by them in secret.
Another surprise, another verse out of context, dealing with works of darkness done in secret. Ephesians 5 verses 11 to 12. It is obvious that Halloween is not a secret holiday, but a very public and secular one. This verse simply does not apply. Yet that does not mean that Christians should not strive to remove the aberrant sexist demands on women, to flaunt themselves in numerous cultural expressions. We should. Yet, let us not mix the war against sexism with Halloween. The two were never historically related. Finally, it seems odd that Blake contradicts herself in the definition of Halloween. First, she argues that it is still the ancient pagan holiday, that is satanic in origin, and it has not changed, so that is why it's wrong. Later, she reverts, and argues it's wrong because it's a completely different secular holiday, which has been changed by our society, to include a new sexist theme. It seems to me Blake should stick with one or the other. Either the holiday is an unchanged ancient Druid holiday, or a changed contemporary secular sexist holiday. To claim something is both exactly the same and completely different, is illogical. Of course there are people who flaunt sexuality on Halloween. Just like there are people who are gambling addicts when they play cards, and just like there are people who are alcoholics when they touch a beer, and just like there are people who still make out at the back of a movie theater, and just like. Point being that Blake wants to make Halloween out to be some type of sexual orgy. The evangelical obsession with sexuality is no secret except perhaps to evangelicals. And this point number 4 may say more about Blake than it says about Halloween. Sure, there are abuses. But when I walked up and down the streets doing safety patrol, I didn't see that many girls dressed like prostitutes. I don't recall any actually. I'm not going to stop celebrating Halloween just because there are people out there who are making it more risky any more than I'm going to stop watching television just because the networks are trying to push the envelope. No, a hermit's life is not what we're called to. By the way, Christmas is getting more risque too. But I'm not ready to give that up either.